Hey there, and thanks for being here. My name is Mike, and I do all kinds of unique projects. I got this golf cart off of Facebook Marketplace with some known issues. It had some wiring problems and no telling what else was wrong with it. So I took a gamble on it. In this video, I'm going to show you what it took to get it running. It definitely looks like they've had some sort of wiring problem. Right there, that green wire's burnt, and there's another couple of burnt wires there. So I have a new switch to go in that today, and hopefully that'll solve that problem. The back of it looks like this. There's the electronics. There's supposed to be a cover over that, but it's gone. So once I do get it running, I have to make a new cover. Here's the exhaust that's on it. I'm not even sure it's the right one. It may be, I don't know. This bolt was broke off inside this bracket. So I took the bracket off, drilled that out, and retapped it with a new bolt. I've got it loose right now because I'm not sure if I'm going to have to pull this motor out or not. They told me it had a new carburetor on it, and it does appear to be a new carburetor. However, this part right here, I call it the manifold, has been taped on and has gook all over it, and it's also cracked. So they had tried to patch the crack with some sort of tape or something. So I bought a kit on eBay that has another new carburetor. It has this, it has the intake there. I have messed with the wiring a little bit and did some tracing with an ohm meter and everything, and determined that a couple of these wires here, I can make the thing turn over and also get it to get spark. But instead of messing with that today, I'm going to go ahead and put the new switch into it to see if that solves all the problems with the switch area up here. Let's see how this matches. It looks like everything was the same. Got red and red, green, green. They got a red with maybe a white stripe. I don't know. Mine's yellow. Got white where black is. This is supposed to be for this cart, so we're going to plug it in and see if we let the magic smoke out. Got a mess here too on the back side. Looks like they've got some wires taped up. I'll go back and do that properly. There we go, it snapped in that time. Well, I got the battery hooked up and no smoke yet. Let's see what it looks like on the back side of this thing. Nothing. Let's see what happens when I try to go to start position. Oh, looky there.
Inconceivable.
How about that? Let's see if it'll spin over. Oh, it does. Battery's weak though. Put the battery back on charge. Well, unfortunately, my compression tester doesn't have the right thread for these smaller plugs, so I'm out of luck on compression testing. I'm going to spin it over a little bit and see what it sounds like. Turns over pretty good. Since I don't have a compression tester, I'm just going to go ahead and short across the starter solenoid with my finger in the spark plug hole to see what it feels like. It's got compression, good compression. What I'm going to do next is go ahead and put the new manifold on there. Oh, check that out. So there must be an O-ring down there too. I'm not going to worry about that right now because I think this one's still intact pretty well. I don't think it's ever been off there. I'm going to leave that one on there. If I have a problem, I'll go back and take it off. So for now, I'm just going to put this on there with a new O-ring in it. Move the carburetor out of my way. Couple of things. This one is probably typical Chinese quality. There's pieces of rubber down in there. Don't know if you can see them, I have to get out. And these two holes are about 50 thousandths closer this way, tighter this way than the other one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill these out just a little bit to give myself some slack, because it ain't gonna never slip down over those bolts. So I'm gonna drill it out and then I'll come back. Okay, I got them drilled out a little bit. It should slide on there a lot easier. So we can get their carburetor back on there now. There it is. It's a little bit of an angle. I guess it's supposed to be that way. I smell old gas too. I don't know if it's in that carburetor or what, but I do smell old gas. Matter of fact, I'm going to take the bowl off of that thing. But still, it smells like very old gas in there right now. See if the float's working. I'm going to put a hose on that and blow through it. That works. Okay, I've done a little research, and apparently they use this carburetor on scooters and many other things. But what would typically happen is this is a vacuum line that goes to the intake to suck vacuum off of as it's intaking. I think it's some sort of little fuel pump on this side or something that's also operating. But the question was, where does this third hose go? And from what I could tell online, this goes to the petcock valve on your gas tank. And in my mind, what that would do is the gas would be shut off coming out of the tank automatically until it gets vacuum from the engine, which opens that valve and allows gasoline to flow from the petcock to the input on the carburetor where the fuel goes. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual fuel line. It has to do with the valve that would be on the gas tank that would stop the fuel from coming down to the carburetor. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this one hole here, and I don't think it'll be a problem. We'll see how that works. One thing you want to do is, if you're using a screw to plug a hose like this, is you want to use a flat screw, a flat-headed screw, to where you can shove it all the way in the hose to where the head will contact the top of the hose. Otherwise, there's a risk of air coming in around the threads of the screw. So always do that when you're blocking a hose with a screw or a bolt. I've got that plugged now. Now I've got to come up with a way to get fuel into this thing. It didn't come with the actual right gas tank. It came with a couple of tanks that looked like they may have came off a lawnmower or a golf cart or something. So I'm going to temporarily run something to it to get it some gas. We'll have a gas tank mounted to it now. It's not all that pretty. It's just one that I took off of an old lawnmower I had that didn't run, but at least it's a gas tank. I also made a trip to the auto parts and bought some fuel line. I don't know if you can see it in there, with a filter in line going to the carburetor. So I've got that all plumbed in now. I think the only thing to do now is to see if this thing will fire up. So if the battery's worth a flip, I don't know if the battery's strong enough to spin it over good, so I might have to jump it off my wife's car. But anyway, we're going to give it a shot now and see if I can get this thing to start. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of this wiring mess. Somebody has apparently spliced into the wires checking things and then wrapped them with this tape here. So I'm going to go ahead and take all this tape off. I think I'm going to pull these wires out. If I can, I'm going to slide a piece of shrink sleeve over there and fix these things the right way. This wire right here has been hot. I believe that's the ground wire. But anyway, I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up. Okay, I've got all those reworked, and they look a whole lot better than they did. I'm going to go ahead and tape them right here as a group. After many, many hours, I have this thing running. I've done a whole lot of troubleshooting on it, and these will probably be tips for other people having problems with theirs as well. Let me show you exactly what I did. When I got this, they told me the switch was bad and they had purchased a new switch, but it was the wrong switch, and they had tried to rig it up to work. So during that process, they'd skinned back a lot of wires and tried to jump to them. So a lot of these wires were melted a little bit. So I cleaned all that up and I put shrink sleeve over all the places where they had tried to splice into it. So then with my new switch, when I plug my new switch in, everything comes to life. I'll get all this mounted, but everything comes to life. If I can turn it on, you can see all that works now. Now at this point, I don't have any of the lights working, and that's not really critical to me right now. All I want to do is get the thing running. I can figure out the lights much easier later on. So I fixed the wiring under the dash. So another thing, there's a brake switch right here. I pulled the two wires off of there, skinned them back, and taped them, twisted together and taped them over to make it think that this switch is on and that you got your foot on the brake. When I got it, the manifold was taped together, it had a crack in it, and they tried to tape over it and seal it with all kinds of stuff. So I bought a new one of those. I bought a new carburetor, even though it had a brand new carburetor on it when I got it. So I have to make sure that this little vacuum line that comes off of the intake manifold goes over here to this side of the carburetor. That's some sort of diaphragm. I'm not sure exactly what it does. This thing right here is, I think, like an electric choke. When it's cold, it has this thing in what they call choke mode. As it warms up, it heats up and pulls back and retracts and takes it off the choke. Even though there was a new carburetor on it, I could not get any gas through the carburetor at all. I could squirt some starter fluid into it and the thing would spin over and run for just a few seconds while it's burning up that starter fluid. But I could not get any gas through the first new carb. So on the second new carb, before I put it on here, I disassembled it on the bench, made sure all the jets and everything were open and clean, made sure the float was working, and put it on here. After I did that, and some of the other repairs that I'll show you in a second, this thing started right up. I also ordered a new coil, which is this thing right here. It comes with the plug wire and plug cap, and also comes with a new spark plug. I wound up using my old spark plug because it worked fine. What I did to test that is I would take the spark plug out, plug the plug wire to it, clamped it onto the frame right here with a little clamp, and checked it for fire. For a long time, I wasn't getting any fire. So here's what I did next. This is a relay. And I've seen several people ask questions on forums about why their cart will turn over when they jump over the starter solenoid, but it won't start or run with the switch. It's probably because of this right here. So what they do is, once you turn on the switch, it sends 12 volts to this yellow-red wire, yellow with a red stripe, and this ground right here, closes the contact of the relay. There's 12 volts on one of these wires, so when that relay closes, the 12 volts carries on out and goes over and pulls down the starter solenoid, and that's how come it starts up when you turn the switch. One of the main things I found was I had to go through every one of these wires. I checked them with an ohm meter. The first thing that I found was all the green wires are grounds. So they went to the main harness here, I don't know if you can see it, and they were literally twisted together with a little clamp over them. So I took all that out, maybe I can show you here. I took all that out, brought all the greens together, I twisted them together and soldered them, and then put shrink sleeve over it. So that was originally just a crimped connection right there. So back to the relay. All the wires on all these connectors are crimped into the connector. And on the ground wire, I was not getting any connection from ground, from the wire itself to the actual terminal. Even though it was crimped on there and it looked really good, there was no connection, or at least it was an intermittent connection. So what I did is I cut the green wire off, cut the terminal off, soldered the wire to the terminal, and that solved that problem, that intermittent problem. But I would recommend that you go through with an ohm meter, check to make sure that you're getting ground to all these plugs where the green wires are, and that's probably going to solve a lot of your problems. Another thing I found is that I removed this side cover. I wanted to see what the belt and drive pulleys looked like. It looked okay, but when you remove this cover right here, there's a ground bolt in it. You can see here's the ground wire coming from the battery, which goes to the chassis, to the frame, and goes to the motor right here. This is the only place the motor is grounded. It's on rubber isolators, so it's not going to ground through the frame. So when I took this cover off, I forgot to hook this ground back up, and everything was trying to ground through the main ground wire, the little small, like, 14 gauge green wire or something, and it heated up and almost melted. I caught it just in time. So if you don't have a good ground, you're going to burn up these grounds right here because the engine and starter is trying to pull its ground through these smaller gauge wires. So you got to make sure that you keep that ground wire right up here, bolted. Maybe you can see it. You got to make sure you can keep this ground wire right here firmly bolted to the motor. I also replaced the starter solenoid, even though I don't think I needed to. Another thing I did is I pulled the terminal off of this red wire right here that goes over to the starter. I took it off at the starter and here, cut the connectors off, and soldered them onto the red wire. I could tell they'd heated up, so I wanted to eliminate that problem. I also replaced this box, even though I don't know that I had to. I replaced it because it's part of the kit that I bought. Another thing that I did, and I don't know if I did it the right way, was I pulled this cover off right here, got to where I could see the flywheel. There is a notch or a boss here on the motor that you align with a T on the flywheel. And when that's aligned, you should be able to check your valves and the rocker arms. And if the rocker arms are loose, that's what I checked in my case, I felt like it was at top dead center where it's supposed to be, with both of the valves completely closed. Okay, to recap, the biggest problems that I think that this thing had was the intermittent ground down here on the relay. I was not too sure about the connections there on the red wire going to the starter, so I soldered those. I fixed the connections under the dash. I actually pulled the starter off and checked it. It seemed to be fine. So after all that and the new carburetor, it started right up. The carburetor really had me baffled. The fact that it was a brand new carburetor and I couldn't get any gas through it. So I pulled it off, put this other carburetor on there that I had checked the jets and all, and it fired right up. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I really hope that was helpful to you in some way. I would really appreciate it if you'd take the time to like and subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, until I see you again, may God bless you, and I hope you have a great day.